Today's episode of Northern Lights is presented by North Star Law Group, a trusted partner for small businesses in Minnesota's legal cannabis industry. Whether you've already applied for a license or just getting started, attorney Jen Reise and her team can help you build a compliant business, identify and navigate risks, put together an application, and keep you informed about the ever-changing Minnesota cannabis landscape. Are you ready to add North Star to your team? Visit northstarlaw.com/cannabis and let North Star Law Group guide you through confidently opening your doors. Again, that's northstarlaw.com/cannabis. Hello. Welcome. Another episode of Northern Lights. I'm your host, Tanner, joined today by John and Marcus. Hey there, guys.
Doing, Tanner?
Hello. Doing well. Seed and Sesh Studio. Marcus, we're happy to have you here. First time in the studio.
You like it here?
I love it.
It's hard to not like it when you got just plants chilling around you. It's a laid back space. It's a fun space to hang out. How have you guys been? I mean, we're coming up to sort of, I can no longer really ask you so how's your summer going? Because now it is October. We are deep into fall. How is your guys' fall going?
It's going good. I had a tough summer, and it's a good fall.
There we go. Falling upward, if you will.
I like that. Yeah.
Falling forward.
Falling forward. I like that a lot. Yeah, you've been posting on Instagram some videos, previewing some stuff you're working on. Do you want to talk at all about it, or just you're working on stuff?
Well, a friend of mine qualified for the social equity license, and so I helped him to apply for a retail license, and I put my name on the license with him. So, yeah, we've applied for a social equity retail license.
Nice, man. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and we're trying to manifest a lottery win. I don't love lotteries. Don't normally play them.
Oh, oh yeah. Yeah, no,
but now you're in one.
But I hope this is a stupid game where I win a smart prize.
We're sending, thoughts and prayers your way. That's
yeah. Tiddly.
Well, good luck with that, though. That's exciting.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we'll kill the game.
Yeah.
When we win the lottery.
There you go.
Yeah. When. I like that.
Yeah.
When I win the lottery.
John, I ran into you at every event that I went to for cannabis over the past couple of weeks. I saw you at the Doobie Dabbler.
Yep.
I saw you at the Legacy Cup.
Yep.
And after looking at the products on your table, I got to ask you, do you have a favorite lake in Minnesota?
I think my favorite lake in Minnesota would be Lake Superior.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I think recently I learned that it is, 13% of Earth's fresh water.
Wow.
Something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I could totally see that. So plug in the watchers, the listeners at home. The reason that I ask you that is the gummies that you guys had at your booth are not just, sour cherry. It's not just whatever, blue raspberry. They are actually named after lakes throughout the entire state of Minnesota.
Yeah, we thought people would like that because with 5 milligrams, there's not much you can do other than really try to identify with people in Minnesota as a land of lakes. So.
Yeah. Well, and I came up and was chatting with you, and the amount of people that came up and were like, oh, Lake Minnetonka, oh shit, I need that one. It's so cool having people just connect to the products that they're buying.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Well, and we also get to invite to the podcast today, officially.
Our ghost.
Our buddy Jordan. Jordan,
yeah.
They can see you. Oh, yeah. Hey, you guys might have watched past episodes. Maybe you saw the security camera that we have mounted in the... No, it's not a real security camera, but the camera that was mounted behind. Maybe you've heard the voice many of times. We've talked to Jordan, but now you can see Jordan. Hey, pretty cool.
Hey, guys. I'll throw an old GoPro right in front of me.
Oh,
tape it down and just hit record.
I like it. I did like the video of us sort of looking at you and nodding along, and you could see we were engaged in the conversation, but man, you just missed that the Jordan touch. So I'm glad.
Actually, yeah, I feel like it gives the audience what we get. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
The whole point is just hanging out with the buddies, Yeah. That's you got to be able to see all the buddies.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
a buddy behind the camera.
No marginalization. We wouldn't be here without you.
Mm-hmm. I appreciate that. I wouldn't be here without you.
Oh, yeah.
You.
So if you guys have thoughts about Jordan, drop them in the comments.
Yeah.
If you want him to wear maybe a different shirt, or if you think it would be funny for him to dress up like Luke Skywalker, drop it in the comments. He might do it sometime. And what's great is he didn't hear about this at all before live right now on camera. So Drop it in the comments. All right, guys, should we move on from that?
Yeah, let's go.
Yeah, all right. So
What's been happening, Tanner?
oh, man, there's been so much news over the past couple of weeks, and I'm excited to have both of you here to help break it down. We're going to be talking about a poll that came out looking at Minnesotans' views and usage of cannabis. We're going to be looking at a municipality that is considering, should we start selling cannabis, or should we have someone start selling cannabis for us?
Oh, gosh.
And we're going to give an update on Minneapolis because, one of the largest cities in Minnesota. We got to talk about what they're doing and how it might impact small businesses and consumers throughout the state.
Nice.
So,
plenty to get through.
A lot of stuff to break down. But first, now you guys already have the number in front of you. So I can't do what I did last week to Sam and Kale where I said, what percentage did you guys think?
I heard it on the radio.
Exactly. We all know.
Before you even made this,
14% of Minnesotans admitted to consuming cannabis in the past month. I mean, vibe check. What do you guys think about that? Does that feel right to you? Does it feel like, what are your thoughts?
I was like, yeah, that's about right. Like, I'm around a lot of people who smoke, but like, that's most people don't. So it's like 14. It's like, that seems like reasonable.
Slightly less than 1 in 5?
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's probably really 15%. I think maybe certain people didn't admit it, but it's pretty close.
I feel like if there is a rounding or polling error, it would be like down.
Yeah.
So I feel like 14 is the floor.
Yeah.
Or 14, 15.
Yeah, I think that note about like the not really wanting to admit that they're cannabis consumers is really true. And I think we saw that really evidently when we looked at the crosstabs of the age of consumers. Now, we all know more young people smoke cannabis than older people. It's not to be surprised. People that are over 65 today grew up in a time where cannabis was just treated very differently. Yeah. There's a stigma around it that takes a long time to break. And we saw that very evidently because in the 18 to 34% group, there was such a small percentage that did not want to say either yes or no. They said, yeah, I'm a consumer, or no, I'm not. There wasn't really that in between. Of those over the age of 65, nearly 5% refused to answer either yes or no. I think that's insane.
I think that's telling. Oh.
Very, very telling.
I think that's very telling.
That means most of them do.
Yeah. I think if you're having a pollster call you and say, do you consume cannabis? If the answer is no, you probably would say...
You just say no.
No. Yeah. If you are refusing to answer that question... I don't know. Sort of interesting.
What do I smoke cannabis today? Well, not yet.
Yep.
So they're like, I don't know.
Yeah. We also saw that we have a higher percentage of people that are on the left end of the political spectrum that consume cannabis, which I guess isn't crazy surprising. Or, as you guys mentioned earlier,
that's where the polling error. Yeah. I think that's.
So
I think those things play into each other.
18% of DFL and politically independents admitted to consuming cannabis, while only 6% of registered Republicans.
Yeah.
I think it comes back to that
That's
stigma.
a lie.
Come on, guys.
It's like 51% of them.
Marcus, I feel like you've smoked with 6% of, at least 6% of Republicans in Minnesota.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
think he's closer to 12%, so.
I mean, yeah, that's.
Yeah.
They don't want to, it's okay though. It's like, but this is what matters is really the support legalizing the use of like recreational cannabis, like honestly, and that was at 61%. I think like that's the number that matters. Like people admitting they smoke or not, that'll reflect in like retail data eventually.
Yeah.
I mean, what percentage of people admit to being hypocrites and liars?
That's a really good question, Marcus. I think it's a good reminder that like
don't take anything I say seriously.
No, but it's like as it's stigmatized though, you're right. Like there's still people who they're like, I can't say I smoke.
Yeah. The first time the three of us hung out together, and I know we've told this story before, but I would not get on camera and consume cannabis. That wasn't something I was comfortable doing. Yeah. And I guess there are other people that are fighting through that stigma.
It's funny because we were recording a podcast.
Yep. The first time we hung out. Yeah.
It's always
and
so
here
funny.
We are. Love it. Well, guys, I do have to say, I think I've had my head in like the cannabis business world all week, but one business idea or note that I took away from this is I think it shows that delivery companies are going to actually have a pretty big role in our industry. Because while there are people that are willing to go out, walk into the store, be that person that walks out with that cool green bag or the brown paper bag or whatever it is, there are other people that legitimately don't want that and would much prefer that an unmarked car show up, someone deliver a package, and then they leave, and that's it. And then now you have your cannabis and nobody saw you in the process.
I mean, it's a false equivalency, but there's some people who are going to sex world and some people who are ordering their dildos through Amazon.
Totally.
And I would say 90% are doing the Amazon. So that's where like delivery systems, will really have a good edge.
Yeah. Well, guys, the other thing that I pulled out in this poll, it looked at how much people are using. You just had to fit that sex world one in there. I love it. All right. Well, so the other thing that I saw in this poll
in my mind.
is we've long talked about what percentage of Minnesotans support the legalization of cannabis.
Yeah.
That podcast that we were part of years and years and years ago was trying to encourage people to call their lawmakers to fight for legalization. Oh. Here we are. It's legal, at least in Minnesota. But what percentage of Minnesotans actually support that and support further national legalization? Well, we saw 61% of Minnesotans support national adult use cannabis legalization, which pretty cool.
I think that's the number that really matters from any of this. Like, none of this polling is going to affect much, but you can always point back to it like, hey, when they want, I know we have a close election this year, so people try to do anything with cannabis, most Minnesotans want this.
For sure.
Yeah.
I remember the Minnesota State Fair, the Senate does like their poll. People can go in and answer it. And when we were creating our voter guide, there was information that came out that showed, shout out Cannabis Count, that showed the majority of Minnesotans that answered the poll supported legalization.
Yep.
And I remember at the time, that was like a switch, at least in my mind, where it's like, oh, this is a no-brainer at this point. Yeah. We just have to keep fighting for it, but people agree with us. This is no longer the uphill battle of 8% of Minnesotans support this, but now people support it. And at least, how many of these people are willing to vote on it, I don't know, but at least 61% of Minnesotans say, yeah, we should end federal criminalization.
Yeah, I mean, shout out to all the advocates, all the people, all the legislators who, work to increase public opinion in favor of doing the right thing. Because as we see here you still got 34% of people who support federal prohibition.
For sure.
Yeah, which is crazy, but,
But it's a good reminder, those advocates going out fighting the issue, they're raising the consciousness of this issue, letting people know, hey, this is ridiculous.
What do you guys think is like the outlook on federal legalization? Like how many years? 2, 4?
That's such a good question.
6?
I don't know. I mean, I think it could still be 5 to 10 years away.
So I'll give you my best case scenario and worst case scenario. Best case scenario, we have Democratic control of president, both branches of Congress, or both houses of Congress.
Which?
Not yet, but could happen.
Could happen. The Senate's least likely.
I think having Governor Tim Walz, perhaps as part of Senate discussions, negotiations, as a governor that oversaw legalization, I think having more states come online as being legal states, I think we're getting closer to it. So best case scenario, maybe in the next 4 years. Worst case scenario, we have things go the other direction, and earliest that it's going to happen is 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, I feel like even though 34% of people oppose it, opposition has pretty much collapsed. Like real opposition with the issue has collapsed.
Yeah, when was the last time you heard SMART thrown around as an organization?
Like, who's even donating to them?
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to see.
I'm glad they did this, though. This is fun.
Yeah.
To see these numbers.
Shout out to Matt DeLong, the guy who was on our podcast last week, who does Nuggets. He also oversees the Minnesota poll, so he was responsible for getting those questions out. Part of the team who was responsible for getting those questions out. And, it's cool to see continual support for legalization. 80% of DFL supports federal legalization. Looks pretty good in Minnesota, at least. All right, let's move on. Polling is fun, but
80% still too low. Like that's
tell me the 20% of Democrats that are like, no, we should
No.
continue arresting people for this. And
No, it's states' rights, dude. I can promise you, it's states' rights. Yeah.
well, let's go from the fun of states' rights to the fun of local municipal rights. Here in Minnesota, we have adult use legalization, but as stores are getting created, as brands are getting built out, we're having local jurisdictions figure out what does cannabis look like on that local level. Later in the episode, you're going to hear an interview that we have with Jen, and she just recently had an editorial published in the Star Tribune where they talked about the comparison between Minneapolis and St. Paul and the two different cities and how they're regulating cannabis. Osseo, a city in the Twin Cities area, is sort of taking a slightly different approach that I thought was very interesting. And I had to bring it to this show because I've not seen something like this in other municipalities yet. And so let me tell you guys a little bit about it. So the city of Osseo was looking at creating a dispensary. They brought in like an advising firm, a consulting firm a couple months back that said, we'll come in and create an entire business plan for you that then you can go and build. Well, earlier this week, and you're listening to this last week, Osseo City Council had a slightly different type of presentation. Someone who came to them and said, hey, I hear you guys want to open a municipality, and yeah, you can put in all of the work to figuring out like how to build it and how to run it and put in the time and labor and energy and buy a building and buy supplies and run inventory, or I'll just run it for you. I'll build the building. I'll buy the real estate. I'll buy the product. I'll sell it. You just have to let me use your municipal license. You can have control over where it's located, the hours, what the branding looks like, and you get 25% of the revenue from it. So they get a 25% equity stake. So essentially, it'd be like a city going into partnership with a private firm to create a municipal dispensary. So it's not a publicly owned company, but it's a company owned by the city.
The city, yeah.
Partially, but only 25%.
Not majority, yeah. Not majority.
So what do you guys think about that? The staff, the city council is interested because that 25% could equal out like $500,000 every year of income for the city. But also it could be, essentially taking a municipal license, something that totally goes around the lottery process and gives it to Red Pine Group.
All profit sharing?
They have that 25% profit share, and that's sort of the extent of it.
Yeah, so there's no investment from Osseo at all. It's just
they just have to put in letting their city time.
I guess I'll say that's good on the city. I'll say.
Yeah.
It's hard to be in the cannabis business. It's hard to run a cannabis business. Cities don't have the expertise. It puts a retail spot in Osseo, and the city is not like losing money.
Yeah.
Like I think this is fine. Yeah.
Interesting.
You think OCM would approve of a deal like this?
I think what should happen is smart Minnesotan should go in and give Osseo a better deal and do it. If that's like, I don't think LCM should be involved, honestly. I feel like this is something that
because
is just legal. Yeah.
It is.
It is like,
interesting.
it's not in the city's best interest to run a dispensary.
Yeah.
Do they have a municipal liquor store in Osseo?
Mm-hmm.
So
they know how to running a liquor because of all the extra restrictions we put on cannabis, and that's a whole nother discussion. Like cannabis is just way more risky.
Yeah.
And so that's the point that I think they're trying to leverage is there's the question of can municipalities even own, sure, in statute they can, but can they direct their city staff to operate a dispensary and to sell something that is federally illegal? There's questions about whether a city can legally tell their staff and hire people as city staff to sell cannabis.
I think in a state that has laws with it, that's kind of a moot point.
I agree. I think it would be
because,
not a huge issue, but
city's not getting federal money like the state is.
But I think the question is, a lawyer would explain this far better than I. But in essence, if the city is compelling one of their employees to break the law, and that employee doesn't want to, the city can't force them to do it.
Oh.
So let's say they get hired as a bud tender, and then they say to the city, "Oh, but I'm not going to sell cannabis. That would be federally illegal. The city can't fire them because they are just saying, I'm not going to break the law.
Why'd they apply to the bud tender position? Why they fill out the resume? I know it doesn't matter. I don't think that person would be in that
I
pool.
agree that I don't think it's likely, but it gets to the question of, is Osseo, is Edina, is Bloomington, are they able to tell their city staff? I think the practical answer is, yeah, they probably will. Can. Many will. The legal, fun, philosophical question is,
are we the first state to do municipal cannabis?
We are.
That is so fun.
Could Minnesota?
So many first.
Yeah.
Shout out to the Atlanta 10,000 lakes.
So it is illegal to sell methamphetamine. It is. That's not something that you could go and sell to someone.
Yeah.
If a state legalized meth and said, but we're only going to allow it to be sold through municipal dispensaries, I think. I personally love the idea of municipal stores. I think it's cool to see the systems of government switch from prohibition to actually like supporting access to cannabis, at least if it's done right. Mm-hmm. But it does raise the question of like, if cities, counties were instructing their staff to do things that were illegal that weren't cannabis related, would I support it as much?
I mean,
I don't know.
I think that if a city decides they're going to have a municipal dispensary, they're going to have to consult with like their economic development department and get some buy-in from them. I don't think they'd be able to even move ahead if those city staffers didn't agree to it. So I don't think they'd be able to like compel them. Like the city council says, we're going to start a municipal dispensary, and then the economic development director said,
"Yeah,
no,
we're forcing you." Yeah, that's
do
fair.
it or you're fired.
Yeah.
And then it's like, if they do invest city resources to start up a municipal dispensary, they're gonna have to hire for like managers and staff for the store anyway.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
So they're not gonna be like shifting people from economic development to go work in the store.
Yeah.
But it's like, I think this is suspect, because if the guy or the group is saying, oh, you'll get 25% profit, and that's $500,000. That means the city could have instead made a $2 million
projected. We're telling you right now it's $500,000. Whatever happens, happens.
Yeah, well, and something, Marcus, I think that's such a good point.
But 4 times more is $2 million in profit.
Yeah,
that's above everybody getting paid and all the expenses being covered.
Well, and guys, what percentage of a license has to be social equity owned for it to be social equity licensed? 65%.
Yeah.
This would be a municipal licensed, but only being 25% owned by a city. Does that feel like that feels so counter to the process? To like the lottery was created because we have so many businesses to be able to sort of go around it by just partnering with a city. I get that's perhaps the city's right, but man, it feels not in the spirit of what House File 600 is trying to do.
I wonder how they run the municipals. I wonder if those are partnerships with liquor stores.
And so that's the thing, is I was not able to find a single municipal liquor store that was also owned by someone other than the city.
Okay. No, it's all public. There's no private ownership.
So this would be like a first in, not just like cannabis, but a first in
municipal ownership.
Yeah. It'd be taking a different approach, which like personally, John, I agree with what you were saying up front, where like, I don't hate the idea of like cities partnering with people that know what they're doing.
Yeah.
But I do hate it when it fights
because what are the cities
market
doing otherwise? It's like they're hiring a bunch of consultants and they're spending way more money to get these dispensaries up and running. And then they're competing with like the guys who know what they're doing.
Yeah.
So it's like, if that's going to be our experiment, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
I'll tell you up front, it's not going to work. Like the city's not going to run a better dispo than like you guys, you know?
Hell no.
So like that's.
I apprect that.
Thank you. But that's what it is. So it's why not make hey guys, we're not going to spend any money on cannabis. We just get cannabis income for the city. Like looking at it for, if I'm a mayor, it's like that deal's better than like me like going out and having to pay a guy who's good at running a dispensary.
That's yeah, I will fight you on one thing because I agree with like basically every single thing you're saying. But I think the city's cut should be the 2% taxes that they get. If they want to make more money on cannabis, you shouldn't be a city. You should be a company. Like it feels weird that we have cities directly compete. I know, but it feels weird that we have.
But it's just like a city. The city can sell their license in a weird way, I guess.
I don't know.
I think like it.
I love the idea of cannabis money being used to support like building parks and like really helping to improve our communities. Something about this felt off to me, but maybe it's just because this is the first that we've seen this, and maybe this will be the model going forward.
Someone from here should just go and offer them 30% and be like, dude, let me like who if they don't get a license in this first round and they're ready to rock, like. I feel like it shows people there's just like another method with these municipals or what's legal with them.
Obviously, this is a very different example, but I'm thinking of like tribal governments that are able to create casinos. Like, could a tribal government just have some company come in and totally run their casino for them? And the tribe just gets a minority cut. Obviously, there's differences because that's like a separate government, that's separate structure. But it feels weird that there's something that's a limited license, but that the cities can sort of. I'm not putting into words well, other than this just feels
wheel and deal.
Fishy.
Yeah, it feels off to me. I'm curious to watch this one, and I'm curious to hear people's thoughts on this. Like, if
I want to see where the money goes.
Yeah,
that would be the most interesting thing of what the city is doing with the money.
Yeah. We always try to invite people at least once in the episode to like drop your comments below, and I'd love to hear what people thought or think about this Osseo private business partnership. Do you like the idea of businesses coming in and partnering with cities to run this? It maybe is much more efficient, or does it sort of go around the process of why we have the lottery system in the first place? Drop your thoughts below.
I don't like municipal dispensary.
It's the lottery. Oh my God, the lottery runaround.
Yeah, it is,
dude. But I'm saying it's open season for everyone. If I live in where's the ski place? Lutsen, right? I live in Lutsen, and I want a cannabis license, right? Right now, instead of going through the process like again in December, why not go to the city of Lutsen and be like, yo, let's do something here. Let's work together. Let's do something. I'm here. I'm ready. Like,
I think that's fair, and
because it doesn't have to be these shady. I think you think it's shady because it's Red Pine Group. That's opaque. Yeah. We don't know what that is. Yeah.
I mean, if it was White Pine, would it be more palatable?
Well, it would be curious to see
pretty trees.
I'll be curious to see if this sort of starts a mad rush of businesses going to cities and saying, "Oh boy, do I have a deal for you?" Especially post lottery.
Projections are so fun because you can be like, "Hey, I'm going to make you this much money. Give me your license."
We're going to install massage chairs in your city council chambers.
Yeah, dude, you can. Like, I think it's cool in that way. It's another opportunity.
Yes, it's fair.
Yeah,
I don't think cities, and I've said this in the past. You can edit this. I don't think cities that used to arrest people should be able to sell this for like a decade, but I know it's too late for that.
No, Marcus, I actually don't think we should either edit that out or cut it or leave that behind, because I think it's an important comment before we take a short break, because it's true. There were people that literally like continue to this day arresting people for minor cannabis infractions that are now considering selling it.
Yeah, Glencoe, Minnesota, and McCloy County should be banned completely.
Yeah. Well, especially some of those counties that had just like crazy high racial disparities where it's like you were clearly using the war on drugs as a tool against your citizens. Yeah. And now you're selling it as a tool to make money off of your citizens.
Sure.
Yeah.
Kind of why, yeah. It's kind of gives you whiplash.
Yeah. The municipalities have long left a taste in my mouth that I don't know how to describe other than I'm really
throughout
concerned.
The whole process, man. It was like they weren't trying to stop it, but they like weren't being helpful. I'll say that. Like, I feel like the cities don't know where their interests lie in cannabis, and it's funny to watch them do stuff like this. Yeah.
Well, and the whims of, and I don't mean this disrespectfully towards city council members that do a good job and whatever, but the whims of city council
Or
members in rural or whatever in rural Minnesota that are elected by, you've got 150 votes,
15
and now you're
votes,
deciding
yeah.
to open a dispensary for your entire county is asinine to me.
Yeah.
It's gonna, yeah.
Shady.
Well,
On that note,
Yeah.
we're going to take a short break. And then, speaking of acetone, we're going to talk about Minneapolis and some of the regulations that they're putting into their city. And then, guys, we've got action-packed episodes that people definitely got to stick around. And then at the end, we're going to do
Buckle
some high notes. So stick around for all that. We'll be right back. Ready to kick off your home grow? We've got the perfect hookup for you. MinnesotaCannabisSeeds.com. They've got everything from fast-flowering strains to unique hybrids, all ready for growing in Minnesota. And guess what? Our listeners get an exclusive deal. Use the code NL10 for a 10% discount on your entire order. Don't miss out and get started with the best seeds. Start your growth strong with MinnesotaCannabisSeeds.com. Remember, NL10 for 10% off at MinnesotaCannabisSeeds.com. Grab your seeds today. I just wish there was some way that I could tell people that I lived in Minnesota, that I liked cannabis, that I was a listener of the Northern Lights podcast. There is! Northern Lights merch!
Dope.
You can get yours today! mncannabiscollege.org/Northern Lights. Get your shirts, get your mugs, check it out. Get it all today. And we're back. That's
Oh,
so
yeah.
good.
Butterfinger.
Guys, we're going to use that on every single transition from here on out.
yeah.
All right. So I do want to seriously dig into Minneapolis and some of the stuff that they're doing. Minneapolis is looking at how do we regulate cannabis in the local level. We had it passed in the state level, really cool. But where dispensaries are, how they look, where people can purchase products, where people can use it, that's all decided by the city. And we're seeing different approaches to how different cities are going to regulate this. We, I think, gave a plug to it earlier. I'm also going to give a plug to it now. In the show notes, there's an editorial that looks at what are the differences between Minneapolis and St. Paul. It's actually from our next guest, so you'll be able to hear her talk a little bit about that. But it looks at how different cities are approaching cannabis. In Minneapolis, well, they've made some minor changes that I'm excited to talk about. It also is still pretty restrictive. So we talked about this a couple weeks ago, so I'm only going to talk about the big changes. But previously, dispensaries had to be 500 feet away from a school. That has been lowered to the same as St. Paul, which is 300 feet. Also the same as liquor stores, is 300 feet. And do you guys know how far away tobacco shops have to be from a school in Minneapolis?
100?
There's actually no requirements at all around it.
Wow. So the thing that can kill you.
Yep. But cannabis, that has to be now 300 feet away.
It's a football
and
field.
it can also be sold in an area of 5 acres of contiguous retail space, which then got dropped down to 3 acres during that last planning commission meeting. So planning commission moved it forward. It's now moving to the city council, and they're going to evaluate, how is this going to impact? Should we pass this? But there's a lot of things that I really think are dangerous about this proposal that are going to harm small businesses. First off, we're not going to have any outdoor cultivation throughout the entire city of Minneapolis, even in the deeply commercial areas, which I guess I understand. But what we are going to have still limited is indoor cultivation, which will only be allowed in deep commercial areas. So if you have a cool shop like this in Minneapolis, maybe you're going to be selling cannabis products out of the front. You've got a room in back that you want to grow cannabis in. Unfortunately not. It's restricted to just the industrial parts of the city. Similarly, if you wanted to open a dispensary, and maybe there's one that's sort of already in the community, you have to be at least 500 feet away from anyone else selling cannabis. So let's say you're a hemp operator, or you're a store that opened with the hopes of becoming a store. If a social equity applicant comes and opens up next to you, you literally can't get a license where you're currently located. You'd have to move because someone else came into the town.
Say that again.
So there are restrictions on how close dispensaries can be to each other.
Okay.
So social equity applicants are going to get first grab at property, being that like pre-licensure round. That's going to happen soon here, where they're going to be able to sort of say, there's no dispensary in Minneapolis. I can pick any parcel and spot to open. Round 2, first round of general licensing. You're looking at Minneapolis. You're saying, I want to open my city. If there is a dispensary within 500 feet of where you want to open, you're not allowed to open there anymore.
So
But what would existing hemp businesses have
You'd
to?
be able to keep selling hemp, but you would not be able to ever become adult use.
Okay,
Can
so
I-
you just couldn't in that location. You couldn't switch over. Okay.
Yeah.
So, these are our friends, but hypothetically, if Legacy Glassware in Uptown
For sure.
they don't qualify for social equity, but they're planning to go for like a mezzo license, I think, right?
I'm not certain, but I imagine, yeah.
But what if somebody who got a social equity like pre-approval said, you know what, I'm going to open up across the street from them?
Then in that
Yeah.
location, Legacy can never sell adult use
Oh,
products.
that's fucked up.
Yeah. And so we're having people, like we're at the Seed and Sesh. I'm using this as an example, that have been open for quite a while, building a community, having people come and know their brand. And now suddenly if across the street someone opened up a dispensary, sorry you built out this building, you planned for it to be a dispensary. Too bad. Now we're in St. Paul. St. Paul actually doesn't have that restriction. So you'd be able to open in St. Paul. But because Minneapolis is considering more restrictive zoning provisions, you'd sort of be fucked if you're in Minneapolis.
I
Is
mean,
there
can't the city get
anything-
sued though for that?
Is there anything similar with liquor? Is what I was gonna ask with like liquor stores.
So there is in Minneapolis.
Okay.
In fact, it's actually a lot higher. It's 2,000 feet away from liquor stores, but that's only for new licenses. That was a measure that was passed just like, I think like 10 years ago, that is affecting people as they're coming into the city. But if you've been selling alcohol for the past 30 years, that doesn't apply to you at all. That's why we sometimes have a bunch of liquor stores grouped together, is they've just been there for a while. They were grandfathered in.
it would be up to the city then to grandfather in all of the registered hemp business.
Yeah.
Can we say grandparents instead of grandfather?
Yeah, well, grandparent
there
them
you
in.
go. Yeah, grandparent
yes.
them in.
Sorry.
That must have changed recently for St.
I
Paul
like
because
that.
I know when we were building the liquor store on West 7th, that was literally, it was a half-mile radius from any existing place of sale for alcohol.
No, so that's the thing that's interesting is St. Paul, that you're correct.
Okay.
St. Paul has a really restrictive liquor distance.
Yeah.
Minneapolis has a less restrictive liquor distance. Now there's sort of flip-flopping where
Wow.
St. Paul is going to be generally pretty chill about a couple dispensaries being in town. Minneapolis, on the other hand, no go. Yeah. It's so interesting, and I think it comes to the nuance of like, do you guys know when you cross from one city into another? Because I sure don't. I'm sure I drove through 6 cities to get here. But as a business owner, where you put your business is going to put you to the whims of a group of 8, 12 people that on this side of the road might decide one thing. On that side of the road, it's a different group of people deciding something totally different.
That's crazy. I mean, there should be some allowance for variances in some special circumstances because that's not fair.
I agree. So actually, if people want to go back and watch the planning commission meeting, you can see Tanner at the end of a very long workday go up and speak to the planning commission and say, hey, we really do need a variance, which is actually, it's funny you say that. That's the exact thing that I was fighting for. Because I do think we're in a transitional time. This is a lot of,
So we should cut that in here.
I don't know. It wasn't that good of a speech, but we have,
Tanner,
I
just
doubt
point
it.
to the upper corner of the screen and say, we'll put the link here.
yeah, we'll put the link right here. You can go and watch that. Along with Flipside, another low potency hemp edible retailer that is sort of in a similar position of, hey, we want to be able to sell adult use and we don't want to get locked out of our community. We've
And
built this.
what were you guys suggesting?
So they were
do?
suggesting lower the contiguous area, which the planning commission did take up. I was fighting for that interim use or the temporary, essentially a temporary variance, allowing people for the next year or two, if you have a hemp license, you would get a waiver from that distance requirements. Because 5 years from now, the free hand of the market is just going to figure it out. Like, if you don't
Yeah.
want a bunch of dispensaries near each other, cool. They're not going to
They're
all
not
be near
gonna
each other
be-
because
yeah.
that just doesn't work.
It's like
No,
when a new
indeed.
smoke shop opens up, eventually one of them closes.
Yep.
Yeah, so it's like
Exactly. It's a balance. And I think like any other industry, we're going to have that. So to have cities so explicitly like, write in this requirement, I think is
So are you saying they didn't listen to you?
no, not yet.
What?
Not yet.
Was it the progressives or the conservative
Just start
ones?
saying names.
Yeah, we're gonna. I will give a shout out to a couple planning commission members that really were clearly concerned about. Hey, we have these business owners coming to us that are a valued member of our community, and we're potentially going to lock them out with this. We probably should do some research into that. Other city council members were much less concerned.
I mean,
I've been in their
knowing
business
Minneapolis, I
committee
feel
here.
like majority of the people who are in the application pool, like, don't care about that. Like,
Yeah.
to be honest, it's not the guys running the hemp businesses, is what I'm saying.
Yeah,
It's not
that's fair.
guys from here.
Yeah, I think it's a good reminder though about and I hate the idea of the political spectrum is actually a circle. It's not a circle, but we do see such progressive policies actually really be a hindrance towards legal cannabis when it's like, well, we got to keep a bunch of weed stores away from each other like we do with liquor and tobacco and all of that, and we've got to protect the kids. And I think
Protect
the city council is not my mom.
Exactly.
Let me grow cannabis on Main Street if I want.
Well, we'll see. Yeah, in the next few weeks. That is.
Ideal versus reality.
Yeah. So I wanted to bring this to people's attention because people can still get involved in this one. St. Paul has passed theirs. It's finalized. We're going to see people being able to start applying for businesses in St. Paul soon. Minneapolis is still working this way through the ordinance making process. So if you want to be involved, there are city council meetings coming up. You can go and make your voice heard. You can reach out to city council members. You can write emails, write letters, make phone calls. They love phone calls, especially early in the morning.
Jeepers creepers.
Jeepers creepers. That's the sound effect that we need. Drop in a Jeepers creepers every so often.
Jeepers.
We'll get them recorded. And
Fucking
I'll get them slotted in.
Perfect.
You know what we got to get people to do? We got to get people to memorize Tanner's speech and then call the city.
Oh, there we go.
Everyone's saying.
So I'll do some of the behind the scenes of speaking before city councils. I typed out an entire speech, which you're never supposed to do. You're supposed to, what are the 5 points you want to hit? But I was a little nervous. So I was like, I'm going to type up my whole thing. And then I got in front of them and I'm like, nah, I know the trick of a good speech is not to just read off the sheet of paper, but to sort of flow with it, to sort of like make it more like you're speaking to the people in front of you. And I did, which was perhaps the worst of all possible worlds, which was I didn't have notes. I had the speech. I spoke as if I had notes, and I kept looking down, and there were blocks of text.
Yep.
And I'd be like, oh, I think I talked about this. And my 2 minutes was done way quicker than
Real fast.
2 minutes. So if people want to go watch that, you can.
your head, yeah.
If people want the typed out statement to send to your city council members,
There you
reach
go.
out. I'll give that to you and help you
And like,
reach out to the council
to
members.
like reiterate, it's really because like a lot of the businesses that have been here could be kicked out or just like shut out from
Oh yeah.
the place they've been, the investment they've made in real estate,
Yeah.
just because.
Yeah. And we have been telling people for so long, hemp can be the on-ramp to adult use. Imagine now if
It is for all
hey,
the
you've
normies.
opened a store, you've built a facility, you've been selling products, you have a brand, you've done all this, and hey, sorry, you got to move a mile down the street.
What
It'd
if
be
you
tough.
don't have that money? You're out of
Exactly.
business.
Exactly.
Killing businesses. Shame on you.
And your property that was super valuable because it was going to be a cannabis business, now suddenly no longer qualified to hold a cannabis dispensary. So I imagine
Can
it's
you
not
hit
as
that?
valuable.
Wah, 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 wah.
Yeah. That's so. I'm so happy we have that board.
Fuck, that made my week.
Well, I can't think of a. I can't think of a
my
better
God,
note to
yeah.
go out on. Maybe that's the question for this week. What sound effects do you guys want us to have? Drop it in the comments below. Do you want a snare? But do you want a magical?
That's what is that, a harp?
Yeah,
Why not?
I think. Yeah, that sounds like a harp.
I want to
in-
hear a wet fart.
Oh. Those are all the other people that wanted to hear a wet fart too. All right. We're gonna play with this more out there, guys. Thank you so much for watching. We're gonna be back in just a second with our interview with Jen Reise. You're gonna be able to hear about North Star Law Group, hear about some fun court cases. You're gonna hear us break down some of the things that we talked about here a little bit more, but from someone who knows the law side of stuff. And then at the end, our high note. Stick around. It's a unique one today, as Minnesotans would say. We'll be right back. Today's episode of Northern Lights is presented by North Star Law Group, a trusted partner for small businesses in Minnesota's legal cannabis industry. Whether you've already applied for a license or just getting started, attorney Jen Reise and her team can help you build a compliant business, identify and navigate risks, put together an application, and keep you informed about the ever-changing Minnesota cannabis landscape. Are you ready to add North Star to your team? Visit northstarlaw.com/cannabis and let North Star Law Group guide you through confidently opening your doors. Again, that's northstarlaw.com/cannabis. Hey, Kale.
Hey, what's going on, Tanner?
Nothing much. So we're here with Kale from Seed and Sesh. Super excited to be chatting with you today. Kale, I'm looking for something to do on Tuesday nights. Have any ideas for me?
Well, Tuesday nights on Payne Avenue are normally pretty quiet, but we do have home grower meetup nights on Tuesday nights. So, we have our little community of home growers out here, and when we opened the store, I realized there are a lot of people out here who have been growing a lot longer than me, and there's a lot of people who are looking to get into it, and so we wanted to just create a space where people could come and talk about their home grow and dispel some myths, and maybe I had people bring in compost for other folks, and
Cool.
It's a lot of fun. It's Tuesday nights, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Bring your own flower if you'd like. We encourage people to enjoy their flower and share their flower outside. But we always have events. We're looking to start getting some more classes rolling on Tuesday nights because people are looking to get just more information and more interactive stuff going on. So
Cool. Yeah. So if I'm a grower, I should come on down to these events?
Oh, absolutely. Even if you're not a grower, but you're curious about growing, or maybe somebody gave you a plant and it's in your window and you want to figure out how to not kill it. Maybe you don't really want to grow super big weed and you don't want to invest a bunch of money, but just the idea of it's really fun. I have folks who just like to make edibles, and they come down and they get to learn about how to make their edibles better and things like that. So it's turned into a really cool community. There's a lot of different folks that come out. So
And remind me, where can people find Seed and Sesh?
So you can find us on Instagram at DD, that's like Dabbler Depot, Seed and Sesh. Also, you can find us at ddseedandsesh.com. And you can just stop down by the shop. We're at 949 or 951 Payne Avenue. They're right next to each other. You can't miss us. We're right across the street from Brunson's.
Sounds like a fun time. You know where I'll be on Tuesday.
All right.
You should be there too.
Absolutely. We'll see you there.
And we're back. Sitting here today with a longtime friend of the show, head of Cannabis and Business Law at North Star Law Group, Jen Randolph Reise. Hey there, Jen.
Hey, Tanner. Really glad to be here again.
Yeah, I'm super happy to have you here. Now, we're sort of in the new studio, not for watchers, viewers of the show, but for you. And what's so cool, we were chatting about this before we came in. You are the first guest that we had in our audio version way back in the day with blankets hung around us.
Yes, that was very fancy.
Yeah, that was cool. And then we moved over to the wonderful Dabbler Depot. They had their coffee shop. They have that cool studio in the back. We were recording there, and now we're here at Seed and Sesh, Payne Avenue. Cool
Seed and Sesh is very cool. I'm wondering if there's a Steve Martin 5-time SNL jacket in it for me. A smoking jacket would be great.
We'll get you a golden sea vault. We'll find something for you.
Okay, I'm excited. Yes, thank you.
But so catch us up a little bit. You were on the show last, sort of before our summer break. Viewers probably remember that super fun 420 special that we did.
That was fun.
That was a hoot. But there's been so much that has happened in our industry. Has happened generally. We're going to talk about some of the news a little bit today. But first off, just what have you been up to over the summer?
Oh, man. I have had a busy summer. so excited to be able to help a lot of social equity applicants get their licenses in, so that midnight of August 12th was a day that was circled on my calendar, months in advance. And my team and I were trying to figure out the best way to help our clients, move towards that deadline, whether we were just helping them figure out whether they were social equity applicants or with sort of unique questions, or helping them actually complete the license application. So that was a huge chunk of work. And then I went to the lake for the rest of the week and missed CannaCon, which was good, even though I heard that CannaCon was very fun.
But it's good to check out, especially post-application period.
Oh, yeah. I knew I was going to be fried, and I was. So, and then but then I turned right around and thought, okay, well, what's the next phase, right?
For sure.
And not to steal our later thunder, but I decided the next phase was going to be real estate and city zoning based, and that I needed to staff up, skill up on that. And it was also going to be, at some point, we were finally going to have a lottery, and that I needed to figure out how to help Minnesota cannabis entrepreneurs stand up a highly regulated business in 18 months.
Yeah.
And at which point I called you.
Yeah.
As you know.
Absolutely. Yeah. So super excited to be joining the North Star team. Super excited to have you on the Northern Lights team. But yeah, it's been cool being able to come in and see the work that our office does, helping new entrepreneurs as they're figuring out what is their cannabis business going to look like.
Yes. You've been doing such amazing education here and at the Minnesota Cannabis College. And I think, like many people in this industry, like, why would we look for someone that we don't know to collab with on something that's really hard? Could we just use somebody who we already respect and who we have already seen killing it?
Well, I appreciate that.
So
yeah.
I'm glad to have you on board halftime, and look forward to our continued collaboration on that.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that. It's been cool being able to come online, being able to sort of help people explore what cannabis looks like and what adult use legalization is going to look like in Minnesota and in the cities in rural Minnesota throughout the state.
Right. I really feel like we have a chance right now, not just right now, in general, that we and the people that we know have a chance to make Minnesota craft cannabis real.
Yeah.
And it's exciting to see what has happened to point on that, and then try to figure out where the next steps are.
And all of those applications that you submitted, they've already gotten calls back that they're approved. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, no. It's been a long process. I think longer than either of us expected. We were at a panel not that long ago, a couple of months back, speaking about this, and estimated maybe by the end of the year. Man, it's been sort of tough looking at all of it rolling out.
Yeah, I at one point had said I thought the lottery would be October 1st. Just that was my shot in the dark based on the information that I had. And I'm always sad to be wrong, but I'm really sad to be wrong about that because the longer that this thing draws out and we don't have the lottery and we don't have people who are able to open, then we don't have any early cultivation happening in order to get product that can be sold by those dispensaries. And like, we all knew this. We worked really hard at the end of the legislative session to figure out how to do that and to abdicate for the way that we thought that it should be done. And so it's sad to see the process play out in a way that feels like that window is closing.
For sure. I recall a certain speaker during the legislative session often laying out for the lawmakers, if you want stores to open April, you have to have product harvested and in jars by this date. You have to have plants in the ground by this date. And we've passed so many of those deadlines by this point. I'm hoping that things get moving forward soon here.
Well, because before that, you have to install your lights.
Yeah.
Before that, you have to order your lights. Before that, you have to have a damn building, etc. Right? Like, there are so many steps to this, and we are in this weird situation where social equity applicants were allowed to apply without any property, any specific property, because that so decreases the capital required, at least to get to the license application process. But it means that there is a lot of work to be done quickly on the back end once we finally have this lottery. Yeah.
Well, I'm happy to come on board and happy for the work that you and people are doing in the state here to help make sure that those stores are ready to open and get to that point. But so we got a lot to talk about today.
Yeah.
I'm excited to have a lawyer on. And well, I know you do more than just looking at court cases. You do a lot of business advising. You actually have a background in securities. I don't know if people know that, but I have to
Buying
ask
and selling
you,
companies, cap tables.
Yeah, it was
that's my
cool
jam.
coming in your office and seeing the Caribou Cup on the shelf.
Yeah, I was part of the team at Briggs & Morgan that helped sell Caribou back in, what would that have been, like 2008?
Yeah, for
Something
sure.
like that.
I think that's so neat. But I first have to ask you about a court case out of the highest court in the entire land, which is Judge Judy.
Judge Judy.
Yeah. So probably people read in Nuggets a couple of weeks ago. You actually had turned me onto it just a couple days before that there was a court case that made its way to Judge Judy of 2 Minnesota hemp operators that sort of had a falling out.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about like what the case was, but more importantly, what are some of the big takeaways that we can learn from this TV show court case?
Yeah. I mean, I like Judge Judy. I used to watch Judge Judy when my kids were little, and that's what was on TV. This was before Netflix.
Okay.
But I think what she does is she makes it more entertaining. What she's doing is essentially conciliation court, right? Small claims court where people can take each other to court for damages and don't usually have an attorney representing them because the amount that's in dispute is relatively low. I'm not sure what it is, $10,000 or something. And so I think what we saw in that case is actually pretty representative of what we would see in conciliation cases in general, and gives us some lessons about as we look for collabs, because basically what this was an idea that 2 parties had for a collaboration, and it didn't work out. And so then one was left with equipment that they didn't really want to have. Somebody's inventory was held by the other party until they could come to an agreement about money, etc. And one of the things that I noticed about that case was there was so little written down, right? There was no original statement about what they were hoping to do together or how the money would flow if they were successful, much less what would happen if they were not successful, which we always have to remember. That's part of my job as a corporate lawyer, is to be the Eeyore, right? Well, I mean, it could work really well, but what if it doesn't? But
I love that analogy. That's super funny. Yeah.
But by talking about how it could go wrong up front, then it lets us come up with fair solutions as we enter into a partnership. When we enter into an idea and we just assume it's going to be great, we see results like this where both parties were very, very upset with each other. There more money was lost than was strictly needed because inventory went bad, and there was people giving each other a hard time on social media, and then they had to pay to go to conciliation court. Here's the other lesson that we learned. You know who Judge Judy or the conciliation court is going to find for? The person who has the better paperwork.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that was one thing that really stood out to me as well, is you have 2 people come in, both very different sides of this argument. One had written documentation of here's how much of everything was taken. The other guy had an estimation, roughly $500.
Yeah, he was just saying written stuff, and the court's well, that doesn't help us at all. You can't just say things, right? You need to have records that were contemporaneous to the time of the thing that they are proving, and then now we have data, right? And so this really says to me the importance of having agreements up front, if we can, at least, napkin agreements, a couple of terms by an email that somebody responds to and says, yeah, that's it. Okay. And then keeping records as we go, keeping records of inventory that is delivered or received or destroyed or whatever, is a super important practice. Metric is going to make us do it once we get to being licensed businesses. So let's let's baby step ourselves there now. Yeah. Even though it's, annoying and takes personnel. Good records is an expense for a business.
Yeah. I think like you've talked about, it's the professionalization of our industry. It might have been cool at a time to be in the cannabis industry and have cash sales that are all handshake agreements. But we sort of, as we come out into the light, as legalization happens, we need to move past that, if you will.
Especially if we hope to use the court system to resolve disputes, as
Yeah.
I would hope that we would.
For sure. Yeah, I think stuff like this is only going to become more common in the Minnesota courts. You didn't often have, black market or legacy distributors suing each other over, hey, you owe me this product. But I think as more stores open, that'll become more often.
Yeah, these contract claims, that's it's a good use of our court system to untangle some of these things. Yes.
Well, I appreciate you talking a little bit about that case. I think at times people look at Judge Judy and go, oh, that's sort of silly. But like you said, it's a good breakdown of what conciliation court looks like. And we can take a lot of lessons away that I hope people watching that are in the industry really do put into action of please write things down, document. Yeah. So now I want to ask you about court cases that I think have a little bit more impact on the day-to-day cannabis industry here in Minnesota. You had a really great piece that was published in the Blunt Strategies newsletter. It was really cool being able to read about 2 cases that came out that are affecting people. The first one was one that involved Minnesota Wes King. So he had sued the OCM saying that the lottery needed to be halted because he had received a stay of adjudication on his record, but that was not qualified as a social equity applicant. Break that down a little bit more and sort of what did we learn from the court's decision?
Yes. So remember, back in the long ago box, coming out of the legislative session, we had the specific definition of who is a social equity applicant for purposes of Minnesota cannabis licensure. And it said that someone who was convicted of a possession or sale or their child father, whatever, and then child or parent, and then it went on from there. Okay, but a conviction was the word that the statute used. So OCM, in telling its agent, Creative Services Inc., who to pre-approve as a social equity applicant, we went through that thing in July. OCM had instructed CSI that people who had a stay of adjudication on their record, that did not count as a conviction for purposes of state law. And so, I do like Senator Lindsey Port actually said in a panel on this topic, something like, we had to draw a line somewhere as a policy matter. And that makes sense to me. I hurt for those people like Wes King and others who had a stay of adjudication on their record, because a stay of adjudication is a thing that can make it harder for people to find housing and jobs and that kind of stuff. At the same time, it is a lesser thing to have on your record than a full conviction, which is why people's criminal defense lawyers helped them plead down to a stay of adjudication when this all originally happened, right? So it's just a complicated question about sort of who is a social equity applicant and who should be a social equity applicant. So the court in this case basically heard from Wes King and the OCM and said, this is a political question. Okay. The question is, who did the legislature mean to be qualified as a social equity applicant? And here we think it's pretty clear that it was people who had that conviction of sale and possession, and that doesn't include people with the stay of adjudication on their record. And that's not something that we can change as a court. That's just...
The
legislature could change it if they wanted to, next session. But here, Wes King doesn't have any leg to stand on here.
Okay, that totally makes sense. And then for people that might not have a background in law or in criminal justice, can you sort of explain it like I'm 5 version of a stay of adjudication?
Okay.
Are you guilty? What does that mean in essence?
Yeah. And here I'm relying on what I learned from my partners, Dan Adkins and Sean Caron, who do criminal defense. Because of course I am not a criminal defense lawyer.
I'm a bat, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Dan is a Division III umpire for baseball. He's a fearsome personality sometimes. Anyway, good man to have on your side. So he's my law partner, and Sean is our associate. And I had a good talk with them before I wrote that piece for Blunt Strategies. Basically, a stay of adjudication is in between a conviction and being found innocent of something.
For sure.
You agree that if you manage to meet the conditions for the certain amount of time, then the conviction will go away, which is why it's a stay. It's a stay of judicial process. That's what adjudication means.
For sure. Okay.
And so, so it's a thing that your criminal defense lawyer might ask for to try to mitigate the damage.
So something that sort of ironically was created to alleviate the potential harms of the war on drugs now is perhaps a barrier for those people looking to become, I mean, not a barrier, but it doesn't make them a social equity applicant. They pled it down when if they maybe took the conviction, now they would be social equity applicants, in short.
Right. And I think that is irony, if I remember English correctly.
It's like rain on your wedding day.
It is. It's something like that. Yeah. So it's a complicated result. This is such a complicated area of law.
Yeah.
But yes. And for me, the other thing that I note about that litigation is that I was concerned that the court would say, we need more time to look at this. Let's delay the lottery or maybe even rerun the lottery.
Okay.
Which, of course, would have even further delayed the industry opening. So I was really hoping that would not happen.
Yeah. Well, so I guess eyes turn back to the legislature. It'll be interesting to see if there's a push this coming session or in the future to widen the expansion of social equity applicant. There's more to come. So the other case that I want to ask you about that I think has a really interesting impact on home growers throughout the entire state looked at what it means to be a seller of cannabis. Now, we have a provision in the Minnesota Constitutional, the peddler's provision, if you will, that says, in short, and slightly summarized, any person may sell the products of their farm or garden without obtaining a license. Now, the court looked at this and said, does this apply to cannabis? And they didn't say no. They just sort of said, we don't have the ability to make this choice yet. They ruled it not ripe. What does that mean?
Yes. This is kind of law school professor territory. Man, you're making me work hard for my podcast.
Hey, I appreciate it, though, because when I saw that it was deemed not ripe, I literally had never heard that legal term before that day.
Yes. So there's this idea in law of you cannot bring just a hypothetical question to a court, right? Would it be a crime if someone did X? And that's in the public interest because that would just tie up the court system. And also, like, a court is not an oracle, right? Instead, it has to rule on real facts before it.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so that's what we say, like, in law school, like, court can't rule on hypothetical facts. And so sometimes people bring suits where they have not yet suffered any damage. For instance, they are just saying this law is in effect and it restricts my ability to do things, and that's the damage. And then you fight about that. Okay,
totally.
So the doctrine of ripeness has to do with, is there a real plaintiff who has suffered a real injury and therefore and otherwise that it's ready for the court to take action on this question. Okay, that's a really nice way to say it.
Okay.
And a less friendly way to say it is that a court can dodge ruling on a question by saying, "Oh, it's not really ready for us."
So because here we had essentially 3 med growers and 1 non-medical grower that said, "I want to sell my flower. I haven't yet, but I want to, but the law prevents me." They haven't necessarily there's not the harm that they can sue over and say, hey, I was arrested for this and I shouldn't have been. It's more the theoretical, I could get arrested for this and I don't want to be.
True, but there's even an additional layer between of the ripeness argument in this case. Excuse me. The court said that it was not right because OCM has not finished its rulemaking.
Okay,
and
totally.
it is possible that in that rulemaking, OCM would allow home growers to sell their flower, which is a very odd thing for the court to say.
Yeah.
Now, I wasn't at all the hearings and I didn't read all the briefings, but I would say I think it is unlikely that the OCM's rules will allow home growers to sell their flower because of how the statute is written, and OCM is constrained. The power of a regulatory body is less than the statute, is what the statute delegates to them, right? So I thought it was an odd result, but basically what it does is kick this really important question down the road for another lawsuit,
Okay.
right? And the really important question, as you teed it up at the beginning, is we have a right under the Minnesota Constitution to sell the products of our farm and garden.
Yeah.
Does that extend to home grow cannabis, right? So there was a suit in Minnesota long before we were legalized.
Oh, yeah. Our buddy Chris Wright, who we've talked to before, was the plaintiff in that case.
And the Minnesota courts found, no, it doesn't apply to cannabis because it's illegal. Other cases on this have found that sort of reasonable restrictions, such as, so not on cannabis, but like on like homemade jams or,
For sure.
Things like that. Like there can be like safety regulation or something like that. Wow, this is a hot issue, and a
Yeah.
lot of people feel very strongly about it. So, okay, now we're going to keep working on it,
All
I
right.
guess.
So sort of stepping out of the thicket of it, and it's sort of a weird question, but sort of taking the lawyer hat off, you've spent a lot of time, like I have, hearing OCM talk about regulations, hearing lawmakers talk about regulations. I recall nearly every time they talk about sales, there being licensure tied to that. Licensure is laid out in statute. There are the 12 license types, however many there are now. Do you see a future where OCM says, yeah, home growers, you can sell your product under the current statutory rules today?
A lot of things surprise me in the world, but
Okay, fair.
I would be surprised.
Okay. Yeah, I think I too would be very surprised by that. But I guess, I've been surprised that they named a director that I had never heard of before, and I was even more surprised she resigned the next day. And
It's true.
I've been surprised by sort of the rollout of this process. So I guess maybe the courts are seeing something that we aren't seeing, and maybe we'll be surprised again. All right. Well, we're going to take a short break here. And then when we get back, I want to talk about editorial that you recently had published in the Star Tribune and hear a little bit more about your thoughts on fun local zoning stuff. So
Awesome.
Stick around and we'll be right back.
Dabbler Depot's Seed and Sesh is the ultimate one-stop shop for all types of cannabis enthusiasts. From grow equipment, including seeds, tents, and lights, to all kinds of Minnesota-grown infused beverages and edibles, Seed and Sesh is a one-of-a-kind cannabis experience. It is also home of the Dabbler Studio, which is where this very podcast is recorded every Friday afternoon. You can also join us every Tuesday evening from 6 to 8 p.m. for our home grower meetup, where you can share in the joys of cannabis cultivation with like-minded folks from right here in the Twin Cities. Find Seed and Sesh at 951 Payne Avenue in St. Paul's East Side neighborhood. Dabbler Depot's Seed and Sesh. Growing plants, growing community.
Ready to kick off your home grow? We've got the perfect hookup for you. MinnesotaCannabisSeeds.com. They've got everything from fast flowering strains to unique hybrids, all ready for growing in Minnesota. And guess what? Our listeners get an exclusive deal. Use the code NL10 for a 10% discount on your entire order. Don't miss out and get started with the best seeds. Start your growth strong with MinnesotaCannabisSeeds.com. Remember, NL10 for 10% off at MinnesotaCannabisSeeds.com. Grab your seeds today. And we're back. All right, so Jen, I'm really excited to ask you more about an editorial that you recently had published in the Star Tribune. So
Yeah.
the tale of two city ordinances. It was really cool reading more about the impacts of Minneapolis, St. Paul, some of the zoning provisions that they're considering or have already approved. Just like I really encourage people to go check out the article. We'll put it in the show notes. But high level, like why does city zoning matter when it comes to cannabis businesses?
Oh man, Tanner, it matters so much. Cities are not able to say no to cannabis retail businesses under HF 100, but they can limit the number, and they can also play various kinds of games about how they set zoning for different kinds of cannabis businesses. And we are seeing cities, wrestling with this issue all over Minnesota right now.
For sure.
And I've been impressed by what St. Paul has done. And so one of my goals in this editorial was to raise that up and say, these are the things that I like about what St. Paul has done. Thinking carefully about how much of the city it would take off the map if they used the whole 500 feet from every school, et cetera, right? So they went to 300 and they published both maps, which I thought was brilliant.
Yeah.
And I also really like that they're letting people locate both their retail and their grow together, because think about it. We've got all these people who want to be micro licensees. One of the cool things about having the micro license is being able to do all the different activities.
Absolutely.
You don't have to do them in the same space pursuant to OCM rules, but it's going to be more expensive not to, right? You're going to have to lease 2 spaces or whatever. But if there's no city that lets you do them together, then that doesn't work, right? And so the cities, going back to where you started, the cities are key because they're part of how we actually implement the law. Can we get open, thriving, economically sustainable cannabis businesses, right? And where will they be? So I think there's going to be some good ones in St. Paul. Minneapolis, I would say, is not bad, right? It's just not as good as St. Paul. There are certainly other cities in Minnesota that I rail about from time to time, who are, I think, so caught in the stigma of cannabis, that leftover, war on drugs mentality, that they can't even see the economic opportunity that's right in front of them.
Yeah, very much so. We'll have to give you a tour of the Dabber Depot before we head out here. But they actually have a whole room in back that was built with the idea of eventually becoming a grow. And it's cool seeing like what a micro business could look like in Minnesota. Now, what's a bummer is this same type of building on a commercial strip in Minneapolis wouldn't really be able to exist, at least in that idea, under the zoning rules they have now. So I think that's such an important point of like, it's really going to impact how we do everything.
Because these are actual things that we have to, get a building and do. And as we said before, there are a lot of entrepreneurs that don't have a building yet because they haven't had to have one. And that's a huge expense that they were able to delay. And so as soon as we finally do this lottery, or even starting a little before, we are going to see people trying to figure out, where am I going to locate this precious business? And cities are still wrestling with how to do that.
Yeah. It will be interesting to see where Minneapolis sort of ends up. I agree with you. I think it has gotten a lot better, especially from where it was a couple of months ago. It will be, I think, a fun experiment to see the Twin Cities sort of figure out, how does legal cannabis look and what does that Minnesota model really look like in practice?
We are also one of the metro areas that has the most different municipalities as part of the metro area.
Interesting. Okay.
Yes, some quirk of history of how Minneapolis and St. Paul grew, and so the first-rank suburbs stayed separate municipalities and get to make their own rules on stuff like this. So it's a much more like scattershot regulatory look than someplace like Denver even.
Yeah. And it's so unique seeing, I've learned so much about alcohol regulation over the last couple of months as learning about cannabis regulation.
Right.
And it's unique going to towns and not really realizing like, oh, there are really only like municipal dispensary or liquor stores here. Or like, wow, all of the liquor stores close at 9 p.m. every single night. And those rules that maybe didn't necessarily impact my life as a non-alcohol user suddenly are going to be impacting businesses that I hope to visit quite regularly. And if they're not able to be open late on Sundays, if they're only in deeply industrial areas, like I think there's a lot to be said about the access of cannabis, not just being legalized, but the implementation on that local level.
Yes. I learned something interesting from a tour of a grow that I went on in Denver. And those guys said to me, Colorado was so anti-cannabis when they legalized that they put it in sort of the poorest industrial areas of Denver. That was the only place that we were allowed to be. And so we're all in these big warehouses that we had to spend a lot of money to retrofit. And there's no way that we can get up to the kind of like cleanliness and eco-friendliness standards that we would like to be at, because we started with all this terrible industrial real estate. So that's a thought too, right? Like we can be a modern safe, clean, eco-friendly industry more easily if we are treated as a regular industry.
Yeah. I'm just so excited to see this all roll out. I think excited for some cities more than others. Earlier in the show, which we're actually doing after this recording, but we're talking about some municipalities that are looking at like, what does local cannabis look like for us? And I think it will be cool a year or two from now to look at the 200 some, townships, cities, incorporated jurisdictions in the Twin Cities that really make it up, and to see what does cannabis look like.
Yeah, a lot of interesting things on the table right now.
Well, so aside from zoning, what are some of those things that you're watching over the next couple of months? Obviously, we have licensure coming up at some point, that lottery. But what are some of the things that you're watching for your clients? Well,
definitely going to be waiting with bated breath for the revised rules of the OCM.
Oh, for sure.
To come out. I and many people had submitted voluminous comments about their first draft. And so interested to see those come. Some of that stuff is going to make it, significantly more or less burdensome to open a business. And so still trying to get our arms around things like how much are those security requirements going to set us back and so forth. Yeah, eventually there will be a lottery, I hope. No, I know that there will be. There will be.
Well, and that's it. So, like, shout out to the state employees that are doing this work.
That's true.
Because we've both had times as educators where you're reviewing work that students have done, and now their job is to do that for applications day after day, hour after hour, week after week, as it keeps going on. And, like, we are very grateful that people are doing that work. We never mean to say, like, it's slow, but it's important work, that's for sure.
It is. And piles of poorly written essays are, somebody told me you get paid for grading, not for teaching. That was definitely true for
I like
me.
that. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
But I think
I am teaching, by the way, this semester. I
Tell
can
me
talk about that a little bit.
For sure.
Yeah, I just had class this morning. It was so much fun. Mitchell Hamlin School of Laws brought me back as an adjunct professor to do the seminar on marijuana and the law.
Yeah.
Or I kind of do my marijuana and the law.
There we go. That NPR. By
Oh, yeah. And it's a lot of fun. I've got almost 20 students who are really excited to learn about this area. I did it as a synchronous remote class so that I can take advantage of the many students that Mitchell Hamlin has all over the country. I've got students in Alaska and Nevada and Arkansas who are writing about cannabis laws in their state, which is really fun because the class also includes this whole part where they have to go do a project and then present to the rest of us. And we'll also put the blogs out on North Star's website.
That's really cool.
If people want to do that. And so I'm super excited for that. In my opinion, there's just a need for a lot of research and writing about cannabis, a lot of educating to do of ourselves and others. And so I wanted them to be able to both skill up, but also share that with the world.
I love that. That's really cool. We've talked in this show before about doctors that are being trained on like, what does cannabis do to our systems, and being able to go out and be the doctors that actually have that knowledge and educate. It's cool to have you be part of that, like, next wave of lawyers, either the people that will be figuring out how does cannabis law actually get implemented and practiced, and not something that was taught in law school 20 years ago as a business opportunity, but more as a criminal justice opportunity.
Exactly. And I also do have, wannabe prosecutors in my class, and I hope that they'll be better prosecutors for having been in the class as well.
I really think this class is cool. I remember when the U of M sort of created their first What is Cannabis class. But you're really part of this wave of educating like the next generation of lawyers. Have you heard from your students like what is motivating them to be interested in cannabis law specifically?
Yes, and like many of us in the movement, it's a lot of different things. Some of them want to be better prosecutors or business lawyers or criminal defense lawyers, specifically on the issue of cannabis. Others of them are more policy-minded
for sure.
And are really interested in thinking about sort of cannabis versus hemp and so forth. I also really like teaching this seminar because in some ways, the uncertainty and the rapid change in the law around cannabis helps students understand that, in fact, the law itself is changing all the time on lots of issues, right? For instance, we're in a very different antitrust moment than we were 100 years ago. Okay, but that seems really lame. So like to say this case was decided 10 years ago, and I do not think it would be decided the same today, right? It's true in cannabis all the time. And so to be able to impress upon students how like we are part of riding the wave, maybe even in, pushing the law to where we think that it should be, is a cool thing to be able to show law students.
Interesting.
Finally, this issue just like touches all these really interesting areas in law, including federal and state preemption. And it doesn't necessarily fall on ideological lines like some of the other issues of our time. And so it's helpful for law students to kind of open up their understanding.
I like that. That's really cool. I had never really thought before, but now hearing you say that, I reflect a bit more that I've been working at North Star for like 3 or 4 weeks now. In that time, there's been 3 court decisions that have come out that have really sort of maybe not upright overturned, but shifted how we think about cannabis. And that's just in Minnesota, like not nationally. And we know that there's a lot happening.
There's a lot happening nationally
as well.
Yes.
Like this is a very interesting field to be in. And I imagine it is for lawyers as well.
It's an extremely, what would I say? It's an extremely interesting field to be
I think
we have the International Cannabis Bar Association, and we're going to have a CLE the day before MJ BizCon in November, and I'm super excited that they asked me to speak on a panel about how Minnesota is balancing hemp and cannabis regulation, and then we're going to hear from some people in other places, California, Montreal, who are doing it totally differently, right? Because, I mean, it's not. This is not going to last forever that we have this weird total amalgamation of contrary regulation, right? Like we have a chance to understand and hopefully be part of breaking that knot and like figuring out how the world is going to move forward, or it's going to move forward, right? Like we are in the middle of a huge season of change, and it's easy to see it in cannabis, but it's actually true in a larger like geologic scale of the, policy.
I love that. It's the microcosm of everything going on can be seen through cannabis in Minnesota. I can't think of a better note to go out on like that. I think that really wraps up sort of what's going on in the industry right now, and just sort of the changing nature, the shifting nature. But it's cool to be sort of on that cutting edge of what the next chapter looks like. We're all building it together.
Yeah, that's for sure.
So like I said, I really encourage people to go check out that article in the show notes. But one thing that I wanted to pull out of your article that I thought was really interesting is the part where you were talking about the smell of cannabis and how Minneapolis is looking at it as this really dangerous odor that's going to be permeating out from buildings and, causing children to go into chaos. And I don't really know that whatever they think the smell of cannabis is going to do. And you compared it to the smell of like barbecue or of like processed food.
Yeah, specifically I said Malt-O-Meal from where I went to college in Northfield. I mean, we would walk down the hill and it would smell very strong of some different cereal on different days. It was very strange, right? And everybody just, that's what happens at St. Olaf. That's weird, man. That's weird, right? And I have never encountered a cannabis business that smells in any way the volume of that.
No, I've lived in so many places where it's like, wow, I can smell that business down the street. And it's like they're working on cars or they're cooking food or they're doing something. And it's just sort of like, well, crazy world, lots of smells. Like it's
exactly. We live in a community, right? I mean, it's kind of like people complaining about a little bit of cannabis odor from their neighbors across the back fence. That's true, but Karen, I can hear your kids screaming for hours and that dog that you never let inside, right? So, I mean, okay, so I haven't said that, right? I'm a Minnesotan woman. I'm not going to say that.
For sure.
but just we choose to live next to people, then there are people next to us. You know,
Yeah.
we live in community, and so I want to be a good neighbor to them, but I also get to take up space.
Yeah, well, and I think it's such a great point that, like, let's say we wanted to make a craft barbecue industry in our state. Like, oh, that's cool. Let's really invite in businesses. But then we required every barbecue to have $1.5 million HVAC system.
Right.
How inviting is that actually to small businesses? Sure, you might get a couple large-scale restaurants that come in, but is your mom and pop restaurant going to be able to open?
No, you're going to shut them down, regulatory speaking, right? Yeah, that's not where we want to be.
Yeah. That's such an interesting thought. And I appreciated that you mentioned that in the article, which again, I would encourage people to go check out. But I think there were so many elements. No, but I think there's so many elements where it's how will cities impact what dispensaries look like, what grows look like, what testing facilities look like. And like you mentioned earlier, putting them into the back corners of our city where we sort of want to put them and forget about is not how we support small businesses. And it's not how we provide equitable access to something that some people legitimately use as medicine.
Very true. So, Tanner,
Yeah.
I have listened to the first episodes of this, and I'm really enjoying the high notes thing that you guys
Okay,
are
for
doing.
sure. Absolutely.
And I wondered if I could offer a high note.
Oh, please. Yeah. What have you been thinking about while smoking up this weed? What's your high note?
So I've been thinking a lot about people who are not current cannabis users and who are interested in seeing if they want to try it, you know, as a substitute for alcohol or to help with pain or sleep or whatever. I'm thinking especially of older people, but also of people that are new to the industry. Had some conversations with people that really sparked this for me, that there's such a need for education. People are overwhelmed by the different consumption modalities, overwhelmed by all the brands that are, people don't understand kind of what they will experience if they try it, which is in part because like there's so little research, and also we're not allowed to like say things that the FDA hasn't approved, right? So it's, I feel like there's a huge need for education out there, and that nobody, I think, is grabbing those reins. Like you and the Minnesota Cannabis College and others are doing such a great job educating people once they've sort of come into the industry and are ready to take like that next level to home grow or whatever. But like, who is saying to people, this is what CBD does?
Yeah.
This is maybe a good dose to start with, other than the people, you know, who are working the dispensaries, bless them, who tell me that they do it all day, every day.
Yeah. I love that, because I think it really, you know, it's very topical, where we talked last week about a NPR Care 11 Star Tribune poll that came out that was really shocking to me, that said like something like 80% of Minnesotans don't consume cannabis and haven't in the past month. And I think I'm in this like smoke-filled bubble of everyone smokes cannabis around me. That's just what people do, that I think I often forget about. There's so many people that need to be educated on what this is, what appropriate use looks like, how they could use it in their life, even down to just like you walk in and there's 8 different types of flower. What is the difference? You can't just tell someone they smell different. Like legitimately, how do you explain that to someone? I think is, I like that. That's a really good one. I'm going to keep, I'll keep thinking about that one, because I think that is a big need, especially as we move forward into increased access, not just to edibles, which is cool, but all the rest of what this industry means.
And I think too, if we can educate, then we work against that stigma that non-cannabis people largely still hold, including you know, some of them that sit on, for instance, city councils. They just don't understand, and they don't know what they don't know.
Yeah, I think that's right. Shine light. That's how you get rid of the darkness. Well, Jen, thank you so much for coming on today. It was really a treat being able to catch up with you on camera and being able to show you off the studio, and we'll have to
It's a
finish
great
with
studio.
the tour here. But before we go, for people that heard you talk a little bit about helping cannabis businesses, for people that maybe just have more questions for you about law and cannabis generally, how would you recommend people go and reach out to you?
Yeah. So check out our website at northstarlaw.com/cannabis. That's our cannabis group. You can fill out a web form there, or you can call our front desk at 651 330-9678. That's also the same front desk number for my criminal defense partners. If anybody needs to talk to them, it's
Good
all
plug,
one number, which we did on purpose. We want to be, a place where people can call and get help, right? Whether it's inspectors or police, or closer to my heart, building a business for success from the beginning. So northstarlaw.com/cannabis, and I offer a 15-minute free consultation for cannabis businesses that are looking for a lawyer.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, Jen, truly thank you so much for coming in today. I appreciate it. We're going to take a short break here, but then we're going to be back with the rest of our high notes. So.
Glad to be here.
Today's episode of Northern Lights is presented by North Star Law Group, a trusted partner for small businesses in Minnesota's legal cannabis industry. Whether you've already applied for a license or just getting started, attorney Jen Reise and her team can help you build a compliant business, identify and navigate risks, put together an application, and keep you informed about the ever-changing Minnesota cannabis landscape. Are you ready to add North Star to your team? Visit northstarlaw.com/cannabis and let North Star Law Group guide you through confidently opening your doors. Again, that's northstarlaw.com/cannabis. I just wish there was some way that I could tell people that I lived in Minnesota, that I liked cannabis, that I was a listener of the Northern Lights podcast. There is! Northern Lights merch!
Dope.
You can get yours today! mncannabiscollege.org/Northern Lights. Get your shirts, get your mugs, check it out. Get it all today. There were times when I was high in high school and my phone would ring and I would see it was my mom.
Yes.
And I've never sobered up quicker in a moment of like, oh, all right. Like turn down the music. I'm about to answer this phone. Hello, mother.
Hydrate and breathe.
Yep. I'm just at a friend's house. Yep. Nope. We're just playing video games. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'll call you soon. And then it's just like, oh shit, guys, was I okay? Do you think she knows? And
It's just freak. Yeah.
she did.
Like,
She did. Every time. But that's okay.
Like your mom knows just like your intonation or whatever. Like she knows like every part of your voice in like
actually,
a weird fucking way.
This is such like a millennial problem that I think wasn't had before. I had my cell phone and my parents could track where my phone was.
Oh, me too.
And so she knew, oh, he's going to the weed friend's house. And so she'd look and she'd be like, oh, he's in Brooklyn Center. And then she'd text me and she'd be like, hey, everything okay? I'm like, yep, just hanging out with be like, okay. Know when you're coming home? Soon. All right. Do you think you'll be home for dinner? I like just every question. And that same thing when I get in front of a wheel of a car. And it's like, here we go.
Yeah.
So she never like gave you a hard time about?
Oh, no, she did all the time. So I was caught my senior year of high school with a decent amount of, I mean, it was only a couple ounces. But at the time as a high schooler, that's a lot of weed.
That's a lot of herb.
Wow.
Yeah.
Back in my
As
day.
a high schooler, dude.
Yeah, I was
Couple ounces.
I was trying to be. I had this really cool idea of I'm going to be the middleman, and I've got these friends that have really good connections, and I've got like a bunch of friends that smoke weed, so I'm gonna help.
I'm a guy, yeah.
And I also at the time maybe was getting into LSD as a hobby. I would never say that on.
Maybe.
Actually, I would totally say that on camera. Yeah, I got really into LSD my senior year of high school,
God
and I
damn.
think my parents could tell.
Yeah.
Hey, this guy is smoking weed and probably doing other drugs. And so I was caught with a couple ounces of weed and many tabs of acid. And so from there on out,
Wow.
it was always, hey,
Party tan.
make good choices,
This
right?
explains a lot.
Party
Yeah.
tan.
Yeah, I was taking acid about 2 times a week for about 3 months.
God
Goodness
damn.
sake.
What the
Yep.
fuck?
I was committed as like, I'm going to find myself, whatever
Yeah.
that Tanner is, and learned through many acid trips that it's whatever the fuck you want it to be. Like, there's
Yeah.
no answer to that question. But
I bet you had a
I
great
think-
bicycle day that year.
I had many of great
I
days.
bet you.
I was in PSEO, so I was supposed to be in school full time,
Mm-hmm.
but I signed up for only online classes. My parents both worked full time. All my friends were in school all day. What was I supposed to do other than take acid and play video games and
Oh
just
my
like
God.
go to the park? And I saw Frozen 7 times in the movie theater, every single time under the influence of LSD. And what's terrible about that movie is that it begins with the scene of the parents dying. And so it's like this joy of the kids, and then tears are flowing down my face. But then the scene just changes, and all of a sudden it's like happy, and there's Olaf, and it's like, this is happy. And there's no better drug to ride that wave than LSD of like oh my God, dead parents, I'm feeling this. And oh shit, now we're singing about winter. Yeah, I'm here for this too. And so I
7
would
times,
encourage you. Well, so my local movie theater had, here's
all
why.
that, yes.
I'm
but
gonna
like,
I'm gonna
come on.
explain why. My local movie theater had a deal at the time where you could buy month-long passes. So if you bought a pass, you could see a movie anytime, as many times as you wanted for that month. And so I committed to, I'll pay $40 to have unlimited movie theater access for a month. And I saw other movies as well, not that many times. I was really committed to seeing Frozen a lot. I won't hide it. I'm a
You're
fan of Frozen.
committed
I
to
think it's a
seeing-
good movie.
I mean,
Frozen on
have you
acid
seen it since
sounds-
then? Has
Many
there been
times.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love that.
I had students
I
that
love
were
that.
really big Frozen fans, and so sometimes I would sing along in my classroom to the music with them, and that was one thing that other teachers just couldn't do.
So you must know the whole script.
I more than I'm comfortable admitting. Yeah.
God damn, kilogram.
Going back to the high note of a couple weeks ago, have I ever made a D&D campaign built around Frozen? Maybe.
How many?
Maybe. One very long one.
D&D, do not disturb.
Dungeons and Dragons.
Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh, by the way, guys.
Oh my
do
goddamn.
you guys like stamps?
Yeah, I like the forever stamps.
Check out these Dungeons and Dragons stamps
Oh,
that
so
you can
cool.
get now. Also, Alex
Are you actually
Trebek
going to
stamps.
use those, or are you just
Okay.
like?
Nah,
No,
those
I was gonna say,
I
just
also
keep
got
those,
stamps
right?
to really use, but
Okay,
no, these
yeah.
are just to
That's awesome.
look at.
You
Who is-
collect stamps?
I had explained this to Jordan beforehand. I have 8 to 10 sheets of stamps.
We're learning a lot.
That's not
about
really a
Tanner.
collection
We're
necessarily.
learning-
I mean,
I love it. I
are
love
you willing to tell us where your kinks are?
in terms of stamp collecting, anything that
Game show host. Yeah.
That was a political answer.
Oh, political. Yeah, exactly. My mom watches this show. Do you guys know that?
Yeah. Sorry.
No. Wow. Let's.
Do you like
Should
mushrooms?
we start with high notes right now?
I think that was the high notes. I think we just.
Full on, right
Yeah,
there.
we'll just put this at the end of the episode. So we're gonna skip to the end script
wait,
here.
wait. I have a. Do you like mushrooms?
Of course, I like mushrooms, Marcus.
I
Absolutely.
mean, we should do some mushrooms sometime.
I would totally be down with that.
Yeah, burn a fire and shit.
I still think we need to
Yeah.
make a spin-off show where we do this same thing, but one of us has to eat 1/8 of mushrooms beforehand.
Oh,
We
yeah.
all
God.
sit in a room by ourselves,
That's fair-
like
that's a
dark,
lot.
Do
for
we,
an
do
hour.
we say who it is?
No. And then we all come into the room, and then it's just we're doing the podcast. And then I think it would be best if we all took like a capsule that might have
That's
mushrooms in it,
interesting.
or might just be like sugar.
I wonder if like people
Placebo.
could guess which one of us it was. Like that's my biggest question.
I think that's a future episode idea. Now, we did have Jen on early in this episode. I don't know about the legality of her potentially dosing people that come on our podcast.
We should do it in Minneapolis.
we're
not St.
not-
There we
Paul.
go. Oh,
Yeah.
decriminalized in Minneapolis.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Hero.
guys, that's really all that I've got. I think we've talked about a lot today. For those that are still listening, I guess thanks for riding with us. Thanks for chilling with us in the seed and sesh as we sesh at the seed and sesh.
Yeah.
I don't think you have anything to be ashamed of, Tanner. I think that was really cool.
No, but that whole segment where you asked me about all of my kinks, that we're gonna have to cut out some of that. All right, well, we're gonna be back in your feed next week.
I like testing my luck on frozen poles with my tongue.
The thing is for the listening audience, Marcus hasn't consumed anything at all today.
I know. And so that would be the other fun game is which of us didn't smoke? Make people guess. Incredible.
I don't even believe in contact highs, but I was like, is this the day I'm going to find out?
Marcus, I think
And then you went inside.
Like the smoke is blowing this way, I'm getting out of the way.
I feel like cannabis has changed who I am as a person, where even when I don't smoke weed, it's made me more of who I am high, which I actually really like about myself. Like, I think I'm more easygoing. I think I'm more like accepting because consuming cannabis helps me to see perspectives that are different than maybe my day to day. And I think I've become a little bit more of like that, who I am when I'm high. And Marcus, I think you are so much Marcus Harkis stoned, even when not. Even when you've not consumed cannabis for weeks or months. Like,
Yeah.
I think if you had told me I smoked weed right before coming here, I would go,
It
yeah,
would
that makes sense.
no difference to me.
And I love that about you. I think that is so cool.
So you saying my behavior doesn't change?
No. Nope.
You're like one of the most regular people I've ever met in like the most positive way, where it's like
consistent.
you've gotten me so stoned, Marcus, that like I was seeing strange and like. Like I was acting different, and you were the Marcus Harkis, like I know every single day.
And what I love is on
like
the
we were
way,
doing the same thing.
That way, like that end of the spectrum where you can just get so stoned and then like go and give a presentation, or just like
that's why
keep
I
living
don't
your life.
believe everybody gets impaired. Like, I mean, if I eat too many edibles, it's a problem. That's why I don't fuck with edibles, but.
Yeah, that's real. That's there are so many people that I know that are lifelong cannabis consumers that are like, oh, but be careful of edibles.
Yeah,
It'll
sneak out. They'll get in your blood.
Yeah.
When is this gonna end?
Well, all right. We're gonna cut this. We're gonna put a kibosh on this, guys. Thank you so much for riding with us through this whole episode. Thanks for listening to the news. Thanks for hearing that interview with Jen. Definitely check out some of those things in the show notes. And we'll be back in your feed in about a week. Thanks to Dabbler Deeper for hosting us. Thanks to Jordan Cam, so happy that that's here. We'll be back in your feed next week. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, Reddit, LinkedIn, YouTube, all that jazz. Subscribe, hit that bell, get notified. We're dropping new clips like every day now, so keep on the watch for those.
I want to watch Frozen with you on LSD though.
Wow. Yeah.
What are you doing tonight?
I'm going spelunking in the morning, so I can't do it.
All right. Well, I think, how about this? One last thought, and then we'll end the episode. What if we did a live event?
Marathon.
You can come and watch Frozen with the Northern Lights crew. You got to bring your own LSD.
Yeah.
But come and hang out, and we'll just watch Frozen. That sounds like a fun time. No children allowed. 21 plus.
21 plus.
Then we can eat
Frozen.
some mushrooms and watch everything everywhere all at once.
After Frozen, right?
It's too much.
And then do a bonfire.
Oh. Well, just like you might share mushrooms with a friend, share Northern Lights with a friend. Definitely send it to someone that maybe you thought of during this episode. If there's a funny clip, tell them to watch it. If you've ever gotten very, very stoned and your mom called, drop it in the comments. Tell us how you felt. What a way to end the episode.
Right, yeah.
We'll be back in your feeds next week. Thanks, y'all.
Tell a friend, bitch.
Northern Lights is a Minnesota Cannabis College production. This episode was produced by me, Tanner Barris, and by Steve Eigenman and Jordan Whiff. Production assistance from Marcus Harkis, Shayna Payton, and John Barty. Video and audio recording at the Dabbler Depot studio by Jordan Whiff. The information provided in this podcast does not, and is not intended to, constitute legal advice, but is instead for general information purposes only. No listener should act solely on the basis of information provided without first seeking advice from their own legal counsel. The views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of the Minnesota Cannabis College. Please listen responsibly.
Thank you.